They keep telling us to ignore what we're seeing. Don't worry, it's fine. But you can't gaslight a country that still remembers what freedom looks like. If your plan for law and order needs soldiers on our streets, your fear isn't about crime. It's about democracy. Here's what's actually happening. The Pentagon, under Trump's pressure, moved to standardize quick reaction forces, up to 500 Guard troops in every state and territory, specifically for civil disturbances. Not hurricanes, not wildfires, protest, dissent, the everyday work of a free people. We've already seen courts step in. Judges in Oregon, Illinois, even Los Angeles said no to these deployments, pushing back on the creeping normalization of troops doing the work of police.
All your life, you learn one of the exceptional things about America is that we don't allow our military to be used against our own people. And then along comes a president who wonders why you can't shoot protesters in the legs. And here we are with American troops patrolling American streets. Now, federal courts have largely disagreed with Trump's legal analysis, such as it is, the one that you heard there. They have halted planned National Guard deployments in both Oregon and Illinois as those cases work their way through the appeals process. There are still hundreds of Guard soldiers in Los Angeles on Trump's orders, though, again, a lower court judge said they couldn't be there, as well as in Washington, where they continue to do things like pick up litter and stand around. Now, again, most of them are stationed far from their families and livelihoods. These are Guard troops. Now Trump's Pentagon has ordered the National Guard to create what's called quick reaction forces of up to 500 soldiers in every state and territory by January. Those units are expected to respond to riots and civil unrest in the U.S. That's according to internal Defense Department memos reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. As one retired National Guard commander told the Journal, quote, "There is no need for this. No mission requires this. Every American, I don't care what state you're from, should understand this isn't what we signed up for." Barry Bruin is a national security reporter for the Wall Street Journal. She's the lead reporter on the team that broke this story. She joins me now. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, so you got your hands on some documents that describe this direction from the Pentagon. What does the Pentagon want the National Guard to do?
So this is after an executive order from President Trump from August. And what it ordered was to create these quick reaction forces in every single state and territory.
And yet the imagery is the point. Uniforms around monuments, guardsmen standing watch in metro stations, staged as a show of force to condition us to accept it. Let's talk motives. Trump has always tried to make the military his stage prop. Call in the troops, dominate the streets, even musing about shooting protesters in the legs. This isn't security, it's theater. And theater becomes policy when we lower the threshold for deploying soldiers against our neighbors. Once you routinize that, you don't just send bodies. You send a message. Your rights are conditional. Your voice is tolerated, not protected.
That will just be available to basically respond specifically to civil disturbances, to public order issues, as the president has been warning about. He thinks it's a really big problem. And now every state is going to have these. They're going to be actually equipped and ready and trained more intensively in order to respond to civil disturbances and be ready to deploy at a really short notice.
So, the Pentagon does a lot of preparatory work on a million different things, right? And the National Guard can be called in to deal with all sorts of civil issues, largely after disaster response. Mm-hmm. How different is this than how they've been employed before, according to the folks you talked to?
Yeah, so most states do have a standing quick reaction force. As you said, it's for hurricanes, blizzards, any kind of natural disaster, and they're supposed to be only called in emergencies. Or sometimes if there's really big riots. I mean, we saw this in the 60s, we've seen this in the past. In this case, it's almost like a first line of defense, right? They're kind of coming, they're supposed to be able to deploy for things that usually maybe wouldn't be considered emergencies, as we've seen happen, in these cases, and train specifically in a standardized way across the country. And the actual language was to quote, against the threat of civil disturbances. And I think this focus specifically on domestic issues and specifically against, again, demonstrators, protests, riots is very different.
Right. So you've got a quick reaction force explicitly trained to be deployed against Americans, right, mm-hmm. for civil disturbances.
And the legality? We know the lines. Posse comitatus, guard authorities, state control, last resort standards. But authoritarians don't change the law first. They change the norms, then dare the courts to catch up. If we accept troops for beautification projects today, It becomes crowd control tomorrow, then preventive measures the next week. That's how a free society drifts, not with a bang, but with a shrug.
At the ready with a kind of lower threshold to use them. That was one of the things I got from your article, right? That this is a real break glass kind of option usually. That what they want is to kind of more routinize the use of American soldiers deployed against Americans for these purposes.
That's right. And we have to remember that this president, in his first term, he always leaned on the threat of military force against demonstrators, against protesters. We saw this in 2020 with the George Floyd protests. And one of the things that people have told us who worked with him was that they had to dissuade him from using military force again, as, trying to explain to him this is supposed to be a last resort, not, one of the first things you do. And so now we're seeing that he's making it easier to do that.
We should note that we have the National Guard deployed, as I said, in Washington, D.C. There's 2,300 National Guard troops that are there. There are troops from Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, West Virginia, Ohio, and South Carolina, where they have been picking up trash, spreading mulch, other beautification projects around the National Mall, heavily tourist traffic areas of the city. So you've got these guardsmen who are still on deployment away from their family, doing something that looks very far, not just from emergency response or quick reaction force, but just far from anything the Guard is trained to do.
The deeper truth is simpler and harder. Power fears accountability. It fears cameras, crowds, and questions. So it attacks the validators, journalists, judges, watchdogs, and tries to replace community trust with visible muscle. Soldiers are honorable public servants, but using them to chill protest is an abuse of their service and an insult to the Constitution they swear to defend. So no, I don't buy the scare graphics, the headlines, the Friday night panic that says only force can save us. What saves us is the same thing that built us: voting rights that are real, courts that are independent, journalism that tells the truth even when it's unpopular, and citizens who show up peacefully and relentlessly to demand better.
That's right. I mean, I live in Washington. We see them around. And, for this president, from speaking with people inside the White House, it's pretty clear that what they want is these images, because ultimately these images of troops in the streets of, just as guarding metro stations, guarding monuments, we get these report cards every day that say what they've done. They kind of provide first aid to some people, break up fights, things like that. I mean, they like the idea of restoring law and order. And especially if there's going to be, like we saw in Los Angeles, a protest where they can send them in and, restore law and order. That's kind of what they're going for.
Do we know about the legality here? I mean, this idea, we've already seen the Guard, you have a federal district judge in Los Angeles that said you can't do this deployment, and his order has been stayed by the Supreme Court pending arguments. A federal district judge in Oregon saying you can't deploy the National Guard in Oregon. A federal district judge in Illinois saying the same, and then I believe upheld by the appellate court. Wouldn't this, this would be in the same legal terrain, right?
Well, yeah, again, states are allowed to have quick reaction forces, and technically, responding to a riot or something is within their general purview. What's different, I think, is that a lot of people say this is really pushing longstanding norms against involving the military anywhere near law enforcement. They're not legally allowed to do law enforcement, but even the idea of troops on U.S. streets desensitizing the public, that's what a lot of critics and former officials say. Just seeing troops in the streets the second that there is a protest is really not usually how things are done in this country.
We don't need a quick reaction force for democracy. We need a steady, stubborn force of citizens. Keep filming, keep asking questions, keep organizing. And when someone tells you that freedom requires a rifle at a subway entrance, answer with the oldest American sentence there is: no. The power in this country still belongs to the people.